We've often said that home espresso is a bit like a hobby, and like any other hobby, there are plenty of ways for you to keep spending money on little things that are going to make things better for you. Little add-on purchases that just improve the way you do everything. Around about the time of the 2012 Olympics, there was a lot of talk about a guy called Dave Brailsford, who was a coach for the British cycling team and was held responsible for the success that they enjoyed all the way through the 2010s. His philosophy of marginal gains looked at finding tiny tweaks to all sorts of areas of a cyclist's performance and making tiny 1%, 2% improvements that when they aggregated together created dramatic changes and made everything much more successful and much more efficient. Espresso, home espresso, is a little bit like that. Tiny changes to grind size, tiny changes to pressure, heat will radically affect the way your espresso changes. If you apply the philosophy of marginal gains by upping your game with other little bits of equipment, you might find at the end of the day you end up with something that tastes just as good as you can get in any fancy coffee shop, maybe even better. So I've said this a lot, but probably the most important bit of extra kit you might want to marry up with your machine is a set of scales. They can be super fancy, they can be super straightforward. These were really cheap. Scales just allow you to understand the weight of the coffee beans that you put into your machine and the weight of the liquid that comes out. We're working with a ratio of roughly 2:1. So you want to make sure that you know you've put 18 grams in there and that you've got about 36 grams out. The scales will help you do that. If, as these ones do, they have a timer as well, that means you don't have to muck around using a phone or something like that to keep a track of the amount of time that your shot is pouring. The scales allow you to understand exactly what's been going on, and it means you really only have to change one thing, which is usually the grind size. The scales take care of everything else. Ideally, you want them to have an accuracy of about 0.1 of a gram. Probably the most important thing that all of these extra tools do for you is to help you get your coffee grounds into the portafilter cleanly and evenly. The little puck of coffee that you have in your portafilter here is really important in the stages before you get it into the machine. All of these little tools will help you achieve that. What you're looking for is a nice flat even bed of coffee that has been tamped and compacted with the right amount of resistance that allows the water to pour through the machine, pass through the coffee and give you a really excellent shot of espresso. Different compounds in the coffee beans come out at a different rate during the process of the shot passing through the machine. Fats come out first, then acids, then sugars. What you're looking for is achieving a balance between those sour and bitter flavors that naturally occur in the beans. And to do that, you want to make sure that everything is nice and even so that you don't have some sections of your puck pouring more rapidly than others. This is where things like this little beaker that came with my grinder or a cheaper version that I picked up in a second-hand shop come in. We've also got dosing dishes like this that just make it easy to get the beans from here into here. I also find using this, a dosing ring, really helpful in getting the grounds in without losing any. You've measured them very carefully to make sure you've got exactly the amount you need. You don't want any of it spilling over the edges. This little dosing ring just creates the right conditions to get all the grounds right in there. Once you have the grounds in the portafilter, you want to make sure that they're spread very evenly around the basket. There are various ways of achieving this, various distribution tools that you can use. This is a wedge distributor. Anybody that's been in steampunk might have seen us using one of these for every shot that we pull on the machine. This is another type of distributor, a needle distributor using very thin needles, a bit like acupuncture needles. This allows you to break up any clumps that might have formed when you've got the coffee grounds into your basket. When you're at home, you've got a little bit more time to play with. I think it's really helpful to use both methods at the same time. Using the needles, you get right to the bottom of the coffee grounds in the portafilter. They're all the way through at the bottom. You're moving them about so that they form a nice flat even bed. Then you can take the wedge distributor and just create a very nice finished flat surface which you're going to then compress with a tamper. Like that. The next step is to compress the flat bed of coffee grounds. The machine that I have is a Sage machine, comes with this tamper which is perfectly adequate, but it's not very weighty. So inevitably I've gone the route of getting something a bit more substantial. They're a really beautiful object, a nice thing to hold in your hand, but they also make a better job of compressing the coffee in the bed. I'm also using a tamping mat, something that was very cheap, but I thought nobody needs one of those. Actually, it's a very handy thing to have. It saves the edge of your counter from getting damaged, it saves the bottom of your portafilter from getting damaged, and again, it's just a pleasing way of getting it right. The tamping technique is really to go in from above. You don't need to do any fancy twists or anything like that. But having the reassurance that you've created a very flat, even bed to begin with makes you confident that you're going to have a much better shot. So if you've done all these things, you should have the basis for a really good shot of espresso. One other thing I would say though, with machines you get a lot of standard bits of kit. This is the milk jug that came with this particular Sage machine. It's a nice jug, it does the job, it's the right shape, but it's too big if you're just drinking coffee for one. This will happily do milk for two, but you might want to arm yourself with milk jugs of different sizes. This one was about £7 and comes from Nisbets in Edinburgh. The shape of these jugs is very specific to getting the right texture of milk, and you really use where the spout is to get the right amount. Using this one, you're going to have too much for 1 cup. Once you've nailed all of that, you might think about taking it a step further. This is the basket that came with this machine. This is the portafilter. Sometimes you'll find that the holes in the bottom of the baskets that you have supplied are very poorly machined, so that they're not particularly even. This is a precision basket. It's a slightly more pricey step to take, but it really will improve the flavour of your espresso. These are made with very precisely drilled holes, and you can see that they are many more on the precision basket than there are on the standard basket that comes with the machine. The precision basket tends to have straight sides. In order to accommodate that, I've also gone to the trouble of buying this bottomless portafilter. You can see right through it. It doesn't have the 2 spouts that you have on this one. This slots nice and easily into there, and it just means that you're not splitting the shot in 2 as you are with this. It's just another tweak to the shot that will allow it to be a little bit more even. You're not going to have one side dominating over the other. Another little tweak that has become very popular among coffee people is to spray your beans before you put them into the grinder. Using a very inexpensive little atomizer bottle like this one, in conjunction with this beautiful little ceramic dosing dish, you simply do a little spray of water onto your beans. This has been a technique that people have been using for quite a few years now, and it's intended to reduce the static buildup that you get in grinders. A very in-depth study recently delved a bit deeper and revealed that this is in actual fact a massive help in reducing static and creating a much more even extraction in your beans. It may feel like a step too far. To be honest, I'm still playing around with it. I think my grinder, I'm always nervous that my grinder is going to fill with moisture, but I'm assured by hundreds of YouTube videos that that's not an issue when you're brewing at home. And I have noticed a difference in the flavours, if not the runtime of the espresso shots that I've been pouring. If you've acquired a home espresso machine, I really hope you've been enjoying getting to grips with it. And I hope that adding on a few little extras like the tools and techniques that I've shown today will help you up your game just that little bit. Just think about those cyclists in the 2012 Olympics cycling to victory. That's what adding on all of these little incremental changes to your espresso brewing techniques is going to do for you.